Hello, and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines and speak with leading policymakers and business leaders. I'm Ali Aitani, filling in for Katie Jensen. This week, we speak with Tom Fletcher, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. As a UN inquiry concludes this week that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, we ask what impact will this likely have on the ground? What challenges lie ahead as the UN turns 80? And what is Fletcher's message to world leaders as they gather for a high-level week at the United Nations General Assembly? Welcome to the show, Under-Secretary General. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
A UN inquiry has accused Israel of genocide in Gaza, months after you said the same and faced criticism. Do you feel vindicated?
So we're seeing every day the effects of massive displacement. We're seeing famine, and we're worried, of course, about famine spreading. We're seeing tens of thousands of deaths over these recent months, and no sign of this coming to an end. And so, of course, we will continue to call for a ceasefire. We will continue to call for full, unequivocal access so that we can stop that starvation and reach all those civilians inside Gaza. We're appalled by what we're seeing, and we need the world to stand up together and say enough.
How hard is it, as a neutral humanitarian, to speak forcefully on Gaza without being dragged into political controversy?
Of course, it's hard in Gaza, as it is everywhere we work. And of course, people who don't like the fact that we bear witness, that we testify on what we see, of course, they will attack us and our work. But it's much easier doing my job than being a humanitarian worker in the field, literally under attack. Last year was the deadliest year to be a humanitarian worker. And of course, it's much easier than being a civilian under the bombs in these places we work. And it's their voices that we have to put at the heart of our response.
Israel denies famine in Gaza, blaming Hamas for diverting aid. How can agencies navigate such contested humanitarian narratives?
It's very tough, and we recognize that there will be a lot of disinformation out there, a lot of alternative narratives. All we can do is shine a light on what the needs are, on what we're doing in response. At the moment, a limited amount, because we're still being blocked from delivering at the scale which we can deliver. And all we can do is keep saying we have a plan. Let us get in 500, 600 trucks a day, open all the crossings, remove the bureaucratic obstacles, cease fire, allow us that access, the NGO access, the commercial access we need to reach all the civilians in Gaza. That's all we can do, is to keep restating in practical terms the situation and the reality of our response, and then we soak up whatever comes at us.
You've said humanitarian credibility is at stake. What reforms are needed to restore global trust and effectiveness in aid?
So we're going through right now the humanitarian reset, which means a massive transformation of our sector. We are defining much more clearly our work around saving lives. We are looking to save 114 million lives through a hyper-prioritized plan in the coming year. We are devolving power away from people like me in headquarters and towards the communities that we serve, because they know best what's needed to save lives at scale. And we are delivering in a much more efficient way, getting rid of the bureaucracy, the impediments, the layers, and making sure that we've got a single mission across the humanitarian community around that life-saving work. And alongside that, we won't retreat from defending our values and defending our people and defending those we serve.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation faces criticism over aid delivery. After recent talks, will the UN partner with them?
So we've been clear that we won't be working through the GHF mechanism. We know we can do this at scale. We have the trucks, we have the convoys, we have the community networks, we have the experience, the expertise from working around the world, including over many years in Gaza. And so our request to the Israeli authorities, to anyone with influence over them, is let us in, let us deliver.
You've called this an age of impunity, with aid workers at risk. Is this the most dangerous time for them?
So I fear that this may well be the most dangerous year in recorded history for aid workers. Last year was already the worst, and this one threatens to be even worse. It's brutal, and there's not enough accountability. No one is being held to account for what's happening to us. Where are these weapons coming from, which are killing our people and killing those that we serve? So we need more than just statements of concern. We need our work to be defended. And I'm in awe. I pay such tribute to our teams who are out there every day, right now, whether it's in Sudan, in Gaza, in Yemen, in Haiti, in Afghanistan, in the DRC. Our teams continue to go into danger towards the sound of gunfire in order to save lives, and they're the bravest of us.
Visiting Gaza was traumatic, and you began therapy. What more can the UN do to support staff mental health?
So I worry a lot about our staff who have lived through this conflict, particularly our national staff who've been there all the way through. I can see when I talk to them that many are themselves going very hungry, and I don't think there's anyone who has been touched by that crisis, but also so many other crises that we work in, who is not suffering and who does, they all need that support for their well-being, for their welfare. I think this is a crisis across the sector, to be honest, a mental health crisis, because we are overstretched, underfunded, and under attack. And we have to do more to get that support to our staff.
This high-level week precedes the United Nations' 80th anniversary. Why is this moment especially consequential?
This really is. I think this is the most consequential high-level week for a generation. And it begins now, in fact, even before it begins, with the Secretary General laying out an ambitious, bold reform plan, much bolder than people thought was possible. So he's leading us into this week with that ambitious agenda. And I hope we can show that we are reforming, we're regrouping, particularly bringing in the voices of those who miss out, lose out in this strongman, survival of the fittest world, but also that we're renewing, that we're imagining what we can be alongside defending what we do. I think this is the week that the UN and the multilateral system and global coexistence fight back.
Syria's President al-Shara will attend the General Assembly. What discussions will the UN hold with his new leadership?
So I've just come from the Security Council where I was sat next to the new Syrian permanent representative who delivered a very powerful statement, eloquent statement. I think it's on all of us now to demonstrate a sustained, patient, ambitious commitment to Syria's development, long-term development, that we get behind Syrian leadership, that we help to move Syria from a position where it still needs humanitarian support to one where it is really leading its own recovery with that international backing. Syria as a country, when I was there earlier, in fact, at the end of last year, people said to me, we don't want to be dependent on humanitarian support. Make sure we get the water, the electricity, clear the mines, and we will go back to being the most generous country in the world. And I think we should back that spirit.
Sudan will feature heavily at High Level Week. What progress should the world expect?
We have to keep hammering away for access to all of Sudan. We've got to get properly into Darfur. We've got to get cross lines. I'm very worried at the moment about Al-Fasher, so we've got to get the convoys of aid moving at scale into Al-Fasher. Now there's this opening, the Quad, which is the US, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE have created an opening for potential progress. And we've got to push through that opening and make sure we're really surging humanitarian support, because Sudan is the big one. 30 million people need our help right now.
You warned many want the UN weakened. Who is undermining it, and what dangers does this pose?
So there's a danger, I think, that as we move further from the middle of the 20th century, in this period when 2 world wars had driven the diplomacy and the courage that created the United Nations, that built these values in order to avoid a recurrence of those wars. As we get further from that moment, people forget. They forget why these institutions were created. They forget the horror that you get if you leave polarization, extremism, radicalism nationalism just to take root and to spread. And so we need that recommitment to these values of global coexistence and to the institution, which, of course, it's not perfect. I work in it. This can be even better. That's why the SG has set out the reform program. But it's still the best model we have for global coexistence.
Critics say post-1945 powers still dominate the UN. How do you see this challenge?
Well, those critics are right that actually many of those systems that were created in the 40s still exist today. There's clearly a need for the member states to get together and work out how to ensure the UN is genuinely representative, genuinely inclusive of all states, but I would also say that it's representing citizens as well. So it's why I talk about the need for renewal, for reimagination as well. And I hope that this week that will also be on the table.
UN humanitarian appeals remain underfunded as needs grow. How sustainable is the system?
Well, we're taking a battering right now, and we will fight for the system. We won't let this go easily. This is a hill we will die on, that we will defend at all costs. But as you say, we're massively underfunded. The appeals right now are only 19% funded. That's 19, not 90. And what that means is that hundreds of millions of people are not getting the life-saving support they need. And all we're asking, by the way, in order to save over 100 million lives, if we got just 1% of what the world currently spends on arms, on defense, then we could do it. So somewhere along the line, the priorities are out of place, and we've got to get those priorities back where they should be, and we've got to fund this effort.
You say 29 billion, just 1% of global defense spending, could save 114 million lives. Has the UN done enough to confront powerful member states about this misalignment of priorities?
We've got to keep trying. We've got to keep doing more. We've got to keep getting that message out there to the member states, as I do and others do in the Security Council, in our bilateral meetings. The SG bangs the table in support of humanitarian funding, but also through our communication with the public, because ultimately we need a movement out there to get behind us. If governments are turning inwards, are becoming less generous, ultimately we need citizens to demand that we're able to do this and we're supported to do this.
You say we must renew the humanitarian mission with idealism and hope. What would that look like for Sudan and Gaza?
It means an end to the wars which are creating such horror for civilians. It means surging humanitarian support. It means bringing people back dignity and agency to organize their own lives. And it means also thinking ahead and protecting civilians from the threats that lie ahead of us, especially climate crisis, the threats of inequality, the threats connected to rapid technological transformation. So it means reaching them now and meeting their needs, but also reaching future generations and making sure they are protected and able to lead the lives that we all want, lives of security, justice, and opportunity. I hear a desire for that everywhere I go. And we've got to get behind civilians looking to rebuild their lives in that way.
Does the UN system offer any real deterrent today? Or is the Geneva Convention's framework now effectively symbolic?
It's more than symbolic. This framework is the scaffolding that previous generations built around the world in order to prevent it from slipping back into polarization and ultimately conflict. And it was not built for the good times. It was built for precisely times like this, when it is under much greater pressure. That was the vision and the courage of those who wrote the founding charter and who built the UN. And we have to bring that same courage and show that we will defend these values as hard as they did. I don't think that those values are any less relevant today. I don't think the UN is any less relevant to people's lives today. And I hope that this high-level week will be the week that the UN fights back.
As the world leaders gather for UNGA, what's your core message? Does the system need a wholesale reset?
So I think we need to regroup. We need to gather the coalitions that will back the UN in this next period, that will support multilateralism and working together to solve the world's problems, rather than this rush towards division and polarization and factionalism. I think we have these two instincts as humanity: to fight for resource or to collaborate for resource. And the UN is in that group that wants us to work together to meet the challenges we face and to build that system of global cooperation. And we need member states, everyone coming to New York right now, to show where they stand and to stand for coexistence, to stand for those without a voice, and to get to work, to roll up their sleeves to stop conflicts and save lives.
Undersecretary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.